Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome to the NoDQ Panel. It is 2018, and the panel is back. My name is Rift. I'm being joined here by the usual panel guests, the reigning and defending wrestling trivia champion, good old JM, Jeff Meacham. How's it going, Jeffrey?
It is a new year, and yet we all still have the pro wrestling t-shirts that debuted last year, boys. You got to buy those, guys. ProWrestlingTees.com. Search for NoDQ.com.
Absolutely. Also being joined by the greatest columnist in the galaxy, Mr. Virtue's Rage. How's it going, man?
Yo, Aaron, what's going on? Hey, a lot of people are probably going to say I look like Lloyd Christmas. That's okay.
Well, I could be Harold then.
Obscure reference.
That's okay, though. How's it going, Aaron?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to be doing this video today. We have our special panel guest who is dressed appropriately today, wearing the NoDQ Panel t-shirt. Perfect for the video today. We're being joined by Stefan. How's it going, man?
How's it going, you guys? And can I just say for the record that for me, this is possibly one of the highlights of my life so far. I've gotten to meet Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes a few years ago. I went to see them. I got to meet them. And up until now, that was like one of those big things that you never thought you'd get to do. To me, you guys are celebrities.
Well,
like, I've been following Aaron for 17, 18 years now, back since, WWF, WCW.
Oh, jeez.
.com, back in high school. I think Aaron's just a couple years older than me. But yeah, to me this is like the best thing I've done all year, and it's almost the new year. So I want to thank you guys.
It is the new year. You're starting the year off right, brother.
Yep.
Well, man, I really appreciate those comments, and I thank you for your viewership and checking out the site over the years. It is 20 years since NoDQ.com first started, back when it was WWF WCW.com in 1998. And we're going to be going back to that time period. Today's video topic will be WCW and what, if anything, could have saved WCW. Now, it's been talked about for years. What happened to WCW? This was a company that was competing with WWE, and not only competing, but beating WWE for a period of time. And then within a matter of 3 years, 1998 WCW had their best year financially. They were red hot. 3 years later, they were out of business. And we know all the stories about the money that was being spent, the big contracts, all the lousy booking, not pushing the younger talent, and so on. Technical issues. WCW was just a mess of a company. So what, if anything, could have kept the company going? And I'll ask each of you for your own thoughts on this. If you were running WCW, what would you have done to have built it back up and compete with WWE? Would you have even competed with WWE? Would you have taken it in a different direction? What would you have focused on if you were in control? So Jeff, I'll start with you. And Jeff, first off, when do you think WCW really started to go downhill? And at that point, what would you have changed?
I always go back to what Eric Bischoff said, both in his book and on Confidential back in 2002 when he had first joined WWE. August 1998, he knew they were on their way down. He knew that the momentum they'd had throughout that entire year was already starting to taper off, and they were going downhill. And remember, they only won the Nitro Raw War that one night in October after Halloween Havoc because they showed the Goldberg DDP match for free. Otherwise, they didn't win a lot of nights on Monday nights that year. I will say that. So that's when the momentum was starting to taper off. And the main reason it was tapering off is because Bischoff has said himself repeatedly, TBS, Turner Broadcasting, and then Time Warner, the merger, AOL, the merger after that, did not want wrestling on their network. They had no idea what to do with wrestling. They didn't like the appeal of it. They didn't see the appeal of wrestling. They had no vision for wrestling. But what I would have done to change it if I was on WCW was not be Eric Bischoff in that short-term goals, short-sighted booking. They were trying to book to the next week and try to win the ratings war on Monday night. Vince McMahon has always laid out, okay, WrestleMania is on this date next year. Let's work backwards and get from here to WrestleMania. So in February, I want to be here. In Royal Rumble, I want to be here. And then he just keeps going backwards until we're at the point we're at now, and then he moves forward. It may not seem like that now, believe it or not. That is his formula. You work from WrestleMania backwards. Bischoff and then later Russo and everybody else. Actually, everybody in WCW, period, throughout the entire, almost 15-year history of the company, when Turner owned it, never had that long-term, here's where I want to be a year from now, except with Sting during the NWO storyline. Other than that, long-term booking was not their formula. And it killed him in the end.
And I do want to add to what you just said there. I think back to that Georgia Dome Nitro in 1998 when Hollywood Hogan dropped the title to Goldberg. One of the biggest pops of all time, but how was that not a pay-per-view event? They left so much money on the table by giving that away for free. Yes, they did beat Raw in the ratings that night, but guess what? The very next week, Raw won again. So they literally sacrificed a big pay-per-view buy rate just to win the ratings for 1 week.
And by the way, sorry, Steph. Nitro lost the night after Bash at the Beach, despite Bash at the Beach being their highest gross pay-per-view of all time.
Exactly. Steph,
so
your thoughts on that?
I got to disagree, though. I think them doing that match on Monday night was amazing.
Oh, absolutely.
Amazing. For one, they had the crowd. I think they sold out the Georgia Dome.
Almost.
And I think they were boasting something about the highest crowd there ever, or that they've ever had, maybe.
Something
but
like
they had
that.
the crowd, and as somebody that didn't get to watch the pay-per-views, that was awesome. That was like Christmas coming early. You got to see not only a title, because occasionally you'd see a title, but it wouldn't be a big match. It'd be something like, Hogan would get put in a title match to punish him for something, and then they'd disqualify him out, or they'd do some shenanigans. He'd win. It wouldn't be a big deal. But to see Goldberg versus Hogan was just amazing. And they could have done it at a pay-per-view. They could have done it at Starrcade. They could have done it at any of the big ones. But to do it on Monday Night Raw, been too long. To do it on Nitro was like a treat. It was something that I never got to see, because when I watched pay-per-views, this was back with the tiny little black box on the top of the TV that would go to those channels, and you could hear them clear, but you couldn't see them. So I'd lay in the living room floor doing my homework on Sunday night, and I'd listen to the pay-per-view.
Nice,
Like
nice.
Tony
Jeff,
Schiavone.
what month was that in '98 when Goldberg won the title?
July 6, 1998.
What month did he lose the title to Kevin Nash?
Starrcade, December.
So that's the big issue. Goldberg was on fire, and they should have kept the belt, the strap, whatever people want to call it and don't want to call it, on Goldberg for a lot longer. I think that, to me, 99 is when WCW started caving in, and the whole Goldberg losing the title was a big factor in that. And let's be honest, we've heard this phrase before: too many cooks in the kitchen, too many egos in the locker room with creative control. Did that happen in WWE? Maybe, but Vince McMahon was the godfather, was the puppet master. That's why WWE stayed grounded. They knew, Vince McMahon was in full control. And today, a lot of people have a problem with that. But we're talking 1998, 1999. So that's my take. WCW had too many egos with creative control. Hogan, Nash.
Well, I think that's a valid point with the creative aspect of it. Like the finger poke of doom is got to be the worst, creatively. Right. The finger poke of doom. But you go back to the stun gun, the bull prod, or whatever they called it, the taser that took out Goldberg. I hated it, but I liked it.
Yeah. Now,
back then, I hated it because Goldberg was the guy. You didn't want to see him lose. You wanted to see the streak go on forever. But legitimately, and I think somebody was talking about this the other day, where it was another podcast. I'm sorry, guys. When your guys' videos, when I watched all your videos, I watch other videos. But he was talking about Aleister Black losing the other night, and that it's okay because Aleister Black doesn't need to be undefeated, and at some point you have to give him his first loss. It's the same with Goldberg. After 150 some matches, you've got to eventually make him lose. Right. The sad part was they didn't do it before they gave him the title. So now not only is he losing his first match, but he's losing the title, and it's under it's under a bullprod. Like, there was nobody that could beat him legit.
Yeah.
And that's where I really think Goldberg should have lost more clean his first match, and it should have been against somebody that they were willing to put up there as supervillain.
Yeah.
Bret Hart. I mean, that would have been cool to see him be the guy that beat Goldberg. But you can go back and look at 5 or 6 different wrestlers.
Right.
But I just don't like the way they did that finish. I mean, that had a lot to do with
Virtue. I do want to add a few things to that. First of all, what Stefan said a few minutes ago, I do agree about the Georgia Dome. I mean, it was the right place, the right time to have that feel. And let's face it, it was the Monday Night War. We had Raw versus Nitro. WWE was doing it too. They were hot-shotting title changes on TV, like Mankind winning the title. So, I mean, it wasn't the biggest problem in the world. I mean, if it was me, I would have done it a little bit differently, especially later, once WCW was clearly losing. Like by 99, I would have slowed down hot-shotting things so much. But back then in 98, things were so hot they could get away with it. So I do agree with Stefan on that point. That Georgia Dome Nitro was a really special moment. I think ideally, though, it would have been better off. I think the bigger problem was not following up on a rematch. We never got that Hogan versus Goldberg one-on-one rematch. It didn't really happen. I think they had a few tag matches, and that was about it. So WCW failed to capitalize on that, and perhaps it was due to politics. Maybe Hogan didn't want to lose again to Goldberg. Who knows? But we never got that rematch on pay-per-view, and I think that was a mistake. And I think the other mistake with that Starrcade was not building a new star. Yes, Goldberg has to lose eventually. You need to end the streak at some point. But I think somebody new should have been Goldberg rather than Kevin Nash, who did not need that win at all. You could have built a new star off of beating Bill Goldberg. That guy would have been an instant star, the person that beat Goldberg. Maybe somebody
Chris
like
Jericho. Oh, never.
Well,
mind.
I actually,
I would have wanted that. I'm just saying.
I'll get your guys' opinion on this. I would have gone with Benoit or Scott Steiner. When Scott Steiner, before he got too broken down, depending on Scott Steiner's attitude, because there were a lot of issues with the wrestlers having bad attitudes and the inmates running the asylum. But I think I would have gone with maybe Benoit. Had Benoit be a killer, have him beat Goldberg and end the streak. Jeff, your thoughts. Who would have you had beat Goldberg to end the streak?
Well, as far as a new star, let me get back to that in a minute. But I like the idea of Bret Hart being the guy to beat Goldberg because he actually did beat Goldberg a year later.
In WCW, he had not really been established yet. They really squandered him. So
there was a difference between him beating him later after the streak got broken and being the original person to break the streak.
I was saying, I would have had Bret be the guy that way. And not only is he the world champion for the first time in his WCW career, but he beat Goldberg. Like, oh my God, that would have been amazing. Now, as far as building the new star, I'm a fan of Chris Benoit's wrestling ability and his career in wrestling, but let me say this. I don't think Benoit would have been where it was when he went to the WWF and left WCW if the Horsemen hadn't broken up. So in 1998, you got to remember, Benoit was still a loyal Ric Flair following Four Horsemen. It took, the better part of a year to break the Horsemen up, and Flair went nuts, and Arn retired. It was just a weird set of circumstances that led to the Horsemen breaking up and led Benoit down the path of eventually being the world champion. Again, they hot-shotted him being world champion because they didn't know what else to do when Bret got hurt at Starrcade going into Sold Out. So I think Benoit being the world champion was almost like, here, we don't want you to go. Here's the belt. Please don't go. And he's like, bye. So Benoit being the world champion WCW at the time you're suggesting, Aaron, I don't think it would have worked long-term. And again, I said earlier, long-term booking was not WCW's vision.
Yeah.
I honestly would have put the world championship on.
Don't say my answer. Come on.
well, I honestly, when he said Jericho, it kind of like pinged in my head because they had a ready-made feud that Jericho himself built up. Wouldn't it have been something if Jericho had been the one to end the streak after all this, just running Goldberg down for weeks and weeks? All of a sudden, Jericho beats Goldberg. It would have made Jericho an instant star. And again, much like with somebody else I'm going to mention in a second, it would have not led him to WWF. And him taking off the way he did, and that he has since. Let's be honest. He's the most talked about guy in wrestling right now.
Yeah, but would WCW have turned Jericho into Y2J?
No, and that's my whole point.
Jericho would have turned himself into Y2J.
Well,
one would hope.
Well, there's somebody that another thing they could have done to not have WWF killed him later, undervaluing Steve Austin when he was in WCW, because let's be honest, Austin was never going to be more than a mid-card, upper mid-card guy in WCW, but he was the best in-ring worker that company had when he was there. I am saying it and I mean it. If WCW had not let him go in 1995, he would have never gone to ECW. He never would have gone to WWF. He never would have been Stone Cold Steve Austin, and they wouldn't have had Austin McMahon, Austin Rock, Austin Triple H. WWF would not have taken off the way they did in 1998 without Steve Austin. So
well, they might have with the DX. They might have.
Well, but the thing is, DX was built, to counteract babyface Steve Austin for a while there. So I honestly think that if WCW had valued Steve Austin's in-ring ability enough to keep him under contract and not let the injuries that were plaguing him in 1995, again, short-sighted, vision, get rid of him. He's useless. He'll never get over.
If Stone Cold had stayed in WCW, well, not Stone Cold, if Stunning Steve Austin had stayed in WCW, would you have repackaged him and made him the guy to beat Goldberg?
If Steve Austin had still been there in 1998, I would have had him make a serious run for the title, whether it was Goldberg or not. Because I honestly don't know if Goldberg would have been Goldberg if it hadn't been for certain. It's a whole thing. If one decision's made, then 20 others get unmade. Butterfly effect. Exactly. Thank you. So
Jeff,
there's a lot of things that could have happened.
Wrestling trivia challenge question here. When did DDP become the WCW World Champion? What month? What year?
April 1999, which again was another thing where with Dallas, they should have pulled the trigger on him at Halloween Havoc.
Yeah, so I think DDP or Bret Hart should have been the one to beat Goldberg at Starrcade.
Yep.
Now, Aaron asked what new, those guys were older. DDP was older when he broke into wrestling, but what newer guy that really wasn't a big star yet? And I'm going to say it might have been a little too early. Booker T. Booker T, to me, the downfall of WCW had a couple bright spots. Booker T was one of them.
Yep.
I think, especially, we had Ron Simmons, African-American champion, so Booker wouldn't have been the first in WCW. But I really think, as a singles competitor, he really piggybacked off the success of Harlem Heat. I think Booker T, that would have been perfect for his singles push. It would have been about a year earlier, really, than they did it. Although, when were they pushing Booker as a U.S. champ? Wasn't that happening?
Yeah,
he was already. Go ahead.
Booker was TV champion in '98, but he was already having the best matches in the company with Benoit over that summer. So
yeah, and Benoit's not a bad choice either. I mean, really,
he's not. But like I said, I don't think Benoit would have been where Benoit was 2000 had the Horsemen been together, which they were in '98. So Booker T was already on that path of single stardom, and he just kept building, and they put the Heat back together in '99, and it didn't work, and they broke him back up. Booker's, rocket, they strapped the rocket to Booker at Bash at the Beach, and it was the right thing to do at that point because the company was a complete disarray with Hogan and Jarrett the way it went down. So Booker T was the right choice then. I do like Booker T being champion '98 though. It would have been a huge thing for him and maybe even for the company, like you said, Virtue.
Stefan, is that how you say your name? Aaron already said it, and I probably botched it.
Yeah, that's how it is.
So you heard all of our answers. I think we're all in agreement that all those guys are better than Nash. I'm curious if you have a particular guy or if you're agreeing with us.
I'm trying to come up with somebody that you guys haven't mentioned. Originally, I was going to say Benoit, like Aaron, but Jeff is right. He was not in a position. If anybody from the Four Horsemen was going to go for the title, it would have been Flair again.
Yep.
Like he was a bit player in the Four Horsemen. He was a badass, yeah, but he was a bit player. Now, if like Aaron was talking about, if WCW had been more foresighted, then they could have started him off to go singles at a point, get him away from the Four Horsemen somehow. Keep him a babyface, make it something where it's a mutual decision or they just break up. But let him go off and then build him up, maybe give him a TV title or a US title victory between then and Goldberg. But Okay, so that was out the door. So I'm like, well, who else could it have been? And then DDP, I thought. And yeah, DDP was but see, DDP was one of those guys that ended up in the Millionaires Club when it was them versus the New Blood.
Right.
So yeah, he was newer, but at the same time, he was basically established by the time the NWO came around and all of the new casual fans joined. Because that's when I watched Hulk Hogan back when he was Hulk Hogan. And then I got back into wrestling as a preteen because of the NWO.
Right.
So now
it's like WCW just didn't want to put a title on newer generation guys until later on, But and I think WWE was way ahead of the curve with that because of like The Rock.
Well, what I liked about the idea of Benoit is all the other guys are like legit heavyweights. They're legit. Some guy to stand across from Goldberg that looks like he stands a chance. Benoit would have to win in a different way. And I think the same could be said for Bret Hart, although Bret Hart was way established by then. They would have to win a different way. They would have to make Goldberg submit. And who can make Goldberg submit? That would be huge. If Benoit had made him submit to the crippler crossface, that would have been huge. I think Booker T was the one to go with. Because at that point, he'd already had the singles run. He'd already had the best of 7 match for the U.S. title. And he would have been the best of both worlds when it comes to looking like he could beat him and having a different style that could actually look different. Actually look like you're not beating Goldberg at his own game. You're beating him some other way. Because I remember, I think it was the 7th match when he did the jump up in the corner with using the top turnbuckle, the jump up, spin around. What kind of pin is that? It's not
Oklahoma roll.
Whatever he did in the corner.
Victory roll or
victory roll. Yeah.
Was it a victory roll?
I think so.
Where he goes into the corner front ways. He lifts his legs up. Dude runs underneath him, but he spun around and caught him with his legs and pinned him. And WWF fans call it the Backlund Bridge, but wrestling fans I think call it the Oklahoma roll. I believe is what it was called. Well, I had never seen that before.
Okay.
So at that point, I felt like Booker T was established enough. If you'd have given him a little bit of a push before, let him take out some guys, earn his way to the match, he would have been the one to do.
Yeah.
Booker T.
Yeah.
I'm kind of upset Scott Hall never got treated as one of the men. He was always a good sidekick, but he should have been pushed as a top guy.
That was his own personal problems.
Yes, maybe because of that they couldn't go that direction, but I thought he would have been a lot better than Kevin Nash.
Well, think of all the tag teams that break up. Every time you have a major tag team break up and one of them wins the title, does the other one ever win the title? Ever?
Not usually.
Jeff won the title. Matt did not. Kevin Nash won the title. Scott Hall did not. Who's the other big one?
Shawn Michaels.
Michaels and Jannetty.
That's
Booker T won the title.
Speaking of which, Aaron, when you are ready to segue into what could have saved WCW, I would like the floor about one HBK.
Go ahead.
Well, I don't know if Aaron's ready to go that way yet.
Well, I mean, you guys have mentioned pretty much everybody that could have been Goldberg, and I think you guys made some great points there. I mean, the bottom line is the infrastructure was so messed up. WCW, at the end of the day, the number one thing that would have saved WCW, in my opinion, was if they had really focused on creating new stars. The bottom line, whether it's Benoit or Jericho or Booker T, those were the guys that later went on to WWE and had great success. Those are the guys WCW had, and they blew it. They blew it with those guys. And several guys like Benoit and Eddie Guerrero, too, another name right there that we haven't mentioned yet. A guy that became a major star in WWE, and WCW just completely dropped the ball with him. You had to make new stars, and the older guys needed to do the right thing and step away. Like I said earlier, the inmates were running the asylum, and Hogan was not putting over anybody. Nash wasn't putting over anybody. I think Hall did a few jobs, but they were kind of like the jobs where, he slips on a banana peel and gets beat that way. It wasn't really decisive or anything. So that was the major problem, in my opinion, that WCW did not make new stars. They relied on the older talents for far too long. So now we'll talk about what could have saved WCW into 1999. when things were really going downhill. Now, Virtue, you want to mention HBK. Your thoughts in early 99, what could have stopped the bleeding at that point?
So, we didn't know at that time that Shawn wasn't going to be back wrestling until 2002. For all we knew, he was out for the rest of his career. However, I'm very, very shocked. He was so loyal to Vince McMahon. I'm shocked that Kevin Nash could not pull him over to, even if it was just as his little sidekick buddy and he couldn't work. That would have been a tremendous buzz, because by 99, in the mid 90s, WCW was purging talent from WWF. Then as we got closer to 99 and 2000, it switched, obviously. So I think WCW needed that one, I can't believe he's here, like, for, if CM Punk showed up in Ring of Honor again, that type of buzz. Shawn coming into WCW, that would have really, I think, kicked him. And I don't know if it would have saved him, but it could have gave him enough voltage in the battery to have 2001's buyout from Vince McMahon not happen. I truly believe that. But Shawn, he was so loyal to Vince. Kevin Nash couldn't even pull him over.
I will disagree, not on Shawn Michaels' talent on the microphone or in the ring eventually coming back. I will say, though, that Shawn was dealing with a lot of demons, even in 99 going into 2000, that had he jumped at that point, it would have been very ugly, because he would have been jumping from a company where he was being taken care of both physically and mentally, to a shark pool where it would have been more drugs, more binging, more everything. It may have killed him rather than saved him and the company.
I have to disagree.
I think Shawn's. I'll let you go here in a minute, Steph. I think Shawn's best on screen of his career is when he had his demons. So from a real life standpoint, you can be concerned from him. I think we would have got gold. I think we would have got some of the best work of Shawn Michaels' career, because let's be honest, when he had his backstage demons, he put some of the best creative stuff out there for us to enjoy. That's Shawn at his best. That's why he survived this long. Stefan, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I have to disagree with the idea of bringing him in. I think it would generate a light buzz in a short-term 3 to 6 month period, and it would be tremendous for one night. It would be like back when the NWO first took over and you never knew who was going to show up. But I think at that point, rehashing what made you on top, what put you on top in the first place, I think you don't want to go that route. You want to do something new. And bringing back Shawn Michaels wouldn't have been anything new. It just would have been...
For WCW, it would have been. And putting him with Hall and Nash, that would have been magic. But I get it. I understand. Like, it's hard. I could barely put myself to make that what I wanted to say for what could have rejuvenated WCW. But then I just kept looking at Shawn's career, and I was like, God damn, he was so good. I believe he could have made something happen.
I personally think that if he had jumped the night he had the fight with Bret in Hartford, if he went through with what he told Vince, I'm leaving, I'm going to WCW, I'm going with my buddies, I'm out of here, I think if he jumped in 97, it would have been a game changer.
But there would have been politics. The problem is you had Hogan there and Savage, and Shawn would have had political issues with those guys. That was the problem with the whole infrastructure at WCW. All these top guys were controlling.
But he had Nash on his side, who was the best politician of all time.
Exactly. They were both.
But it would have been interesting, Aaron. They would have been politicking creative.
But it would have been the same overall problem. Again, I think they needed to focus on making their own homegrown talent and making stars. When WCW was at their peak,
I will agree with that.
When WCW was at their peak, they were making some new stars. There were a few homegrown talents like the Giant. Letting go of the Giant, I think, was a big mistake, believe it or not. I mean, the Giant was out of shape. I think they needed to motivate him. He was a great Giant for WCW and a big star in that period when they were at their hottest in 97.
Yep.
So if WCW had motivated him more, got him to lose weight, and kept him around, the Giant could have been a major star in WCW, instead of just phasing out, losing to DDP and then going to WWE in 99. They missed out on the Giant for sure. They made DDP even though he was older. He was another homegrown star. Sting, of course.
Booker T.
Yeah. Another mistake WCW made in 98 with Sting, in my opinion, was putting him with the Wolfpack. I thought that was a huge mistake.
Yes.
I thought that severely damaged his drawing ability and his character. And when he came back in 99, he was not moving the numbers. Like, he came back, the ratings did not go up. Nothing went up when he came back. I think that pretty much killed him in WCW. And Luger, too, when they put Luger in the NWO and made him a heel and all that, I think that ruined Luger as well.
I think the Wolfpack. Okay, let me go back a few years. I think anybody joining the NWO after, just before Eric Bischoff officially revealed he's part of the NWO, anybody before that moment should have been in the NWO, and not Scott Norton, not Buff Bagwell, not all those other guys that they brought in. When the NWO became the top draws and the job squad, it killed the entire momentum right away. And even in '97, when they were having 4 or 5 limos and the company was still hot, WCW thought, oh, well, the company's hot. NWO, that you feed. It's like, no. It should have been elite people. It should have been when they brought Kurt Hennig in. That was a good idea. If they brought Bret Hart in as a full-fledged member in '98 when he joined or whatever, that would have been interesting. Not, the freaking, the next, like Conan. Why is Conan in the NWO? Oh, my God.
I like Conan.
You know what? I liked him in the Wolfpack. I thought that worked well, actually, in '98. I thought he was a good fit. I feel like guys like Disco Inferno were not, though. I think by that point it was becoming a little bit ridiculous.
Well, I go back to the part where they had Eric Bischoff reveal he was part of the NWO. From that moment, and he walked on Nitro and said, you have 30 days. You're with us or you're not. That was the beginning of the end for the NWO already, because the first guy to sign up, and I love Mark. We all love Mark. But Marcus Bagwell joining the NWO was, okay, well, he's not really elite, but okay, sure.
Yeah, but that did wonders for his career.
Yeah.
For his career, yes, but not for the NWO and for the company.
I don't know. I think he was a big enough name coming maybe a couple of months even just after joining the NWO. He made his name and made it worthwhile. I'm
not saying that him joining the NWO and becoming Buff Bagwell, it was good for him, and it was good eventually for the NWO. But what I'm saying is that moment where somebody that wasn't a top name in the entire business led to guys like Scott Norton and even Vincent when he was wrestling and not being DiBiase's head of security or whatever, that kind of messed it up too.
Yeah.
But there were people that should, and the whole
Scott Norton, absolutely. But Buff Bagwell, the success that they had making him into the star made it. I think even a tad disappointment the night that he joins, like why would he? A couple months later, you're like, absolutely Buff Bagwell.
Right. I think maybe what made Buff and the NWO look bad was all the other bad, like Vincent and Scott Norton, etc. Horace Hogan. Was a lackey. But those lackeys probably made Buff was stuck in between the superstars and the lackeys.
Exactly.
So Buff might have been okay, and the NWO had all the real big-time lackeys not been in there. But Buff got lost in the shuffle.
Well, they made another mistake. They made a mistake with Buff, too, because when Buff got hurt in '98, see, this is another problem with WCW. They failed to capitalize on momentum. When Buff got hurt, the fans were feeling sympathetic towards him. When he came out on that Georgia Dome Nitro and made his return, he got a huge reaction. He should have been a major babyface at that point, feuding with the NWO. And then what did they do? They turned him right back heel, and that ruined him, in my opinion. They did this with a lot of guys. They did it with Conan, too. Conan was really over. 1 second, Jeff. Conan,
that's okay. Go ahead.
Conan was doing great, actually. I think he was appealing to the Hispanic audience, and I think WCW should have gone more with Conan and explored the possibilities with him in that market. And I think WCW really ruined him by early '99 as well. Again, having Conan and Rey Mysterio job out to Hall and Nash when they were doing the NWO Black and Red, Mysterio losing his mask. That was a huge mistake. That was terrible because the mask was marketable. You can sell the masks to kids, and Rey Mysterio looks like a 10-year-old kid without the mask. It was a huge mistake. And Conan, I thought a lot of these guys, they had their momentum taken away from them when they were starting to get over and connecting with the audience. And I also want to mention Kurt Hennig and the West Texas Rednecks. That was an awesome storyline, one of the best storylines at WCW, and they quickly killed it off because of politics. That was really frustrating. Jeff, go ahead.
Okay, well, as far as they didn't kill off because of politics, they killed off because they were trying to have Master P be the good guy, and the Southern WCW fans were like, well, we like the Texans. No, sorry. So it wasn't policy. It was just like WCW went, well, that didn't work. All right. I forgot what I was going to say before because that's okay. I think the NWO's main problem, whether it was Buff or it wasn't just one person, it was the fact that literally, like Big Show said on the Rise and Fall WCW DVD, he had 5 limos showing up with NWO people. It's like that's just too many. If he kept it to an elite few and they kept bogging down WCW with takeovers and attacks and everything, if they kept the NWO vision the way it was going into Fall Brawl '96, it would have worked for a lot longer, I think.
Right. Now,
Well, I agree with you on that, but I feel like I have to throw out the idea that the NWO was supposed to be like a rival for WCW. NWO versus WCW. I think part of the good aspect of bringing in the lower talent, the mid-carders, the jobbers, is that you fill out that card. It's not just all in the main event because everybody that's in the NWO is trying to get that main event spot. You also have guys in the NWO that can come out and work the first match. You've got 1 or 2 guys that can come out and work with the cruiserweights. You've got guys that can come out and do tag team. The NWO fills in all the.
They picked the wrong lower card talent then to put with the NWO because they had got. I mean, I'm not saying who should have been in the NWO, but they had Chris Jericho, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit. I mean, can we keep going on? Raven. You had so much talent, but yet they put Vincent and the big time lackeys with the NWO.
Right,
so yeah,
the NWO can't win, even though they're popular because everybody now likes the bad guys. They still can't win. WCW still has to, remain strong.
Yeah.
So WCW remains strong in the undercard, while the NWO is running rampant in the main card.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so funny. I'm sure we're going to bring this book up at some point. So the Death of WCW book said it best in the very early beginning of the book. The same big stars that were big stars when the NWO formed, Hogan, Hall, Nash, Flair, Sting, were the same big stars in 1999. Hogan, Hall, Nash, Flair, Sting. All those guys were the same top stars 3 years later. And the problem is 3 years on TV every single week for 52 weeks of the year is a long time to be shelled out there to the masses. And people are just like, I'm sick of these guys. Yeah, and they're cool and they're throwing the gang signs and they're awesome. But it's the same guys. Can you give me some new people?
Yeah, and WWE does the same thing now, but the difference is
do.
They're the only game in town, so they can get away with it. You know, that was just one of WCW's problems was that, but there were other factors.
Complacency.
As well. The production of the show was very poor, and they tried changing their image. In '99, they changed the logo, which I thought was terrible. I hated that logo. I thought that was the worst logo ever. That was just one of.
I love the new logo.
I hate it. You know what? It wasn't until like a year or two ago that I realized it actually spelled out WCW in an abstract way. I never knew that. For the longest time, I'm like, okay, what is this thing? It's like a spaceship?
That first 3 or 5 seconds. Know. You didn't know that was a C?
I did not until like a year or two ago.
Oh, and then the way the entranceway, the 2 W's spread apart when a guy came out.
All right.
I had no idea that spelled out WCW in a weird abstract way. I seriously had no idea. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm sure I wasn't the only person, though.
It took me the better part of the first Nitro when they revealed the logo to realize it was a C, but it didn't take more than a day.
Well, Aaron, what did you think it was? What did you think it was?
I just thought it was like some weird spaceship. I had no idea what the hell that logo was.
It was, and the spaceship landed. And you know who came out of that spaceship? Vince Russo. So go ahead. That's the elephant in the room you've been waiting to bring up, haven't you?
Yeah,
we can make fun of it. WWE doesn't even have an E in it.
Yeah, so anyway, Eric Bischoff came in. He was doing fine for a while, but then things fell apart. Bischoff tried all these ideas, like bringing in Master P, as we mentioned, and that flopped. Bringing in Kiss to perform on Nitro, which was a bad idea.
Well, no, it wasn't a bad idea, Aaron. It was the fact that we spent so much money on Kiss.
And that's what makes it a bad idea.
Well, the best thing Eric Bischoff was spending money. That he was the master at that.
Exactly.
Well, again, short term, spend money now, and we'll reap the reward. It's like no. Eric Bischoff's entire problem was he set out to destroy the WWF.
Yeah.
And Vince McMahon didn't actually try to destroy WCW until he was behind in the war.
Yeah. Vince was
like, all right, well, screw you then.
Vince was just trying to make money. See, that's the problem. You know, Bischoff, I think, got it to the point where he was taking it so personally that he forgot to try to focus on his own company and making money and staying profitable. You know, it became an ego trip for him, and I think that was a major factor. But yeah, Bischoff was eventually relieved of his duties, and then Vince Russo came in and attempted to save WCW. So here are my thoughts on Vince Russo. I felt like it was needed to make change. You know, come in, make the shows faster paced, which I did like, because if you watch those Nitros in the summer and fall of 99, they were very slow paced and boring shows. You know, Russo, when he came in, the shows became a lot faster paced. I liked that. But then at the same time, they were having production issues, and it just goes to show WWE had a superior production team. Say what you want about Kevin Dunn and the people in WWE, but they produce a very slick-looking show. WCW didn't have that, and that was a problem. They needed better people working production, and I think Russo had some good ideas in WCW, but I think the biggest problem was Russo was trying to make WCW too much like WWE. It was like a second-rate version of WWE. Now, Virtue, I know you're a big Vince Russo supporter. What do you think he did right, and what do you think he should have done differently?
Those first 3 months were fantastic, in my opinion. And you know, the ratings didn't really go up huge, but they were better than previously. So we're talking late 99, those 3 months. But you know what happened? Politics, Kevin Sullivan, I don't even know who else was backstage. Russo was sent home 3 months in. And then they completely abandoned all of his stuff and picked up new at the beginning of 2000. So when he came back and he had a 6-month run when we had the New Blood. Yes, that whole era. What were some of the pay-per-views? New Blood Rising, Greed, or stuff like that. That Russo at that point was all in for Shock, because he was like, there's nothing saving this. They've already pulled me. Now I got to come back after and trust me, he says this. If you look at ratings, they've all flatlined in WCW at that point. So you can't pinpoint the decline at that point on Russo or anybody. But, you know, did he have Vince McMahon? No. But what has Vince McMahon really done since super creatively with the 9-10 million people watching Monday Night Wrestling on Monday night with 2 shows? Now it's 2.53 million people. So Vince went back to his old school vision. Roman Reigns, John Cena. So the magic of the Attitude Era was a team. It was Vince Russo, it was Vince McMahon, and you can put other guys in there too, but it couldn't work. Like, as much as I like Vince, it couldn't work without Vince McMahon. It's just the way he wanted it to. That's my take on it. So who wants to pick me up here?
Go ahead, Stephen. Go ahead.
I think Vince Russo, it wasn't all the shock value of his writing. I think when he came back and he did the New Blood, I think that was his next big idea. I think that would have saved WCW if they had given it time, because I had never seen that before. You know, you've had invasion angles, you've had, well, tons of invasion angles. I mean, the NWO, and then you had the almost sort of with the with Benoit and Dean Malenko and Eddie Guerrero and Saturn. What do they call them? The Radicals?
Yeah.
Radicals, yeah.
I mean, you see invasion angles all the time. You never see just a roster split. And the idea of the New Blood versus, and I hated the name of the Millionaires Club, but the Millionaires Club was, I thought it was a brilliant idea. You literally split the roster down the way, and you actually create an environment where you have to bring up the new talent. You have to give them pushes, because you have to fill out the card. And
so, Aaron, real quick, Stefan. Aaron, there was an attempt. There was an attempt to make new talent, but maybe it wasn't the right guys. Maybe at that point it was guys that were really obscure at that point. Sorry, Stefan, go ahead. Or Jeff wants to talk.
Finish your point.
Well, yeah, but you have to fill out the main event, and so even if it's just 3 or 4 guys in the New Blood that you're pushing to the top, you're trying to create new talent, and I think they had it in some guys. I think they had it in not Sean Stasiak. He was half tag team
O'Hare.
champions. O'Hare.
Sean O'Hare.
Yes.
Sean O'Hare.
Dear God, Sean O'Hare could have been a huge main event talent. Could have been. Then they stuck him with what's his name, and they had the tag. But
Jindrak first though.
Yeah, Jindrak's pretty good too.
Yep.
If they'd have both been singles, they both could have had top spots.
Yeah.
But I think the New Blood was a great idea.
Yeah.
But they
The
didn't
problem is those guys were so green. That was the thing. You know, it was.
Yeah.
I think they needed, more training. The problem is WCW needed to push the guys like Benoit and Jericho and Guerrero in 98, 99, and then, kept working on developing those other guys. And then by like 2001, you can bring those guys up and they'll be ready to go when you can, have them viewed with the Benoits and Guerreros and make new stars, another generation of new talent. Jeff, anything you wanted to add on this? I mean, Jeff, if you were in charge of WCW around the time Russo took over, would you have done what he did? What would you have done if you were in charge? How would you have changed WCW in late '99?
Okay, first of all, I am not a Vince Russo hater, despite what people have seen and believe of me. I am a Vince Russo fan because Vince Russo helped us out early on in the history of Extreme Mayhem. He was a big yes for us. He helped us out a lot, and he was an awesome person. Now, Vince Russo becoming Vince Russo, the TV character, was not a good idea, I don't believe. I think it would have worked in the New Blood situation if they went to the original storyline of Bischoff leading the Millionaires Club and Russo leading the New Blood. The fact that they turned both Bischoff and Russo heel didn't work, number one. Number two, the whole point of that storyline was to elevate the new stars. How many times did Hogan beat Kidman that summer?
Yeah, exactly. Now, you could argue maybe Kidman wasn't the right guy to be, beating Hogan.
Now,
I'm not saying Kidman is the guy to beat Hogan, but that was the whole microcosm of the storyline. The fact that new stars are being created and Hogan's just going to bury.
With this creative power, his creative card.
Exactly. And the other thing is, Vince Russo as a TV character in 2000, again, would have worked if it had been Bischoff versus Russo, New Blood versus Millionaires Club.
I agree with you on that.
You know what I would have liked? Oh, Jeff, before you finish your point, I just wanted to say real quick, I would have liked the idea of maybe Bischoff and Rusev doing the brand extension. And
Wait. Russo.
What did I say?
It's Rusev Day.
Did I say Rusev?
By the way, happy Rusev Day, everybody.
Happy Rusev Day. Thank you on that. I would have hired Rusev. I don't know how old he would have been at that time, but I would have brought him.
I think he was 12.
Yeah, I still would have brought him in. But yeah, I like the idea of doing Bischoff and Russo in a brand split right then and there and having two different brands instead of having them shake hands right away. I wasn't really a fan of that. I liked the idea of them being enemies. I think that would have been more interesting.
To be perfectly honest with you, I don't think Russo really wanted that angle. I don't think he wanted to sit there and be shaking hands with Bischoff.
He said that even.
They could have gone so far as to split one on Nitro, one on Thunder, and to continue the rivalry, you have your New Blood come to Nitro, and now they're on the Millionaires Club's home turf, and then they come to Thunder, and you have them on the New Blood's home turf, and then you've got sort of like a sports kind of thing where you have home field advantage.
Yeah,
I mean that would have been different because with the brand split with WWE, you don't really see that.
Right.
No. Now, let me say, Russo as a TV character in 2000 was good. The powers that be, where he looked like Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget, not so much.
Right. And everybody gives Russo crap for his after WWE run. Let's be honest, he did in the early TNA days, Sports Entertainment Extreme, when they did the weekly pay-per-views, he was very much responsible for making TNA at least the second best wrestling company in the United States where they got TV gigs. Russo had a lot to do with that. TNA is technically still around, but he helped it at the beginning.
Yeah, Aaron and I are both...
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Steph. No, go ahead, Steph. You're good. Go ahead.
Well, Russo's problem is that he's always getting on board a sinking ship. After he left WWF, he's always trying to save a sinking ship, and sometimes there's just no saving to be had.
Well, that's his viewpoint. His viewpoint was that WCW was beyond repair by the time he showed up in '99.
Yeah.
Well,
It's just,
to give Russo credit, he went to TNA when TNA was still in its infancy. So, and he like Virtue, Aaron and I will be the first two to tell you, Virtue, we supported TNA from Jump Street because we were so tired of the WWE's nonsensical storyline. Katie Vick is a great example. That's when Extreme Mayhem started, was because of the Katie Vick storyline.
And Russo had nothing to do with that.
He didn't. And Russo, being in TNA, brought Aaron and Mike and I into a TNA fandom situation where we liked TNA. We ordered the pay-per-views every week. We watched them every week. We watched Impact when it debuted. We were TNA fans because of Russo's booking.
Yeah, I don't know if it could have been saved or not, though. I mean, I think Russo makes a valid point. I mean, the company was so messed up when he came in that I don't even know if it could have turned around. He only had 3 months. If he was given a full 6 months to a year without any interruptions. I mean, that stuff in 2000 when Russo left was terrible. I mean, that WCW with Sullivan in charge, I mean, that was just awful. Hogan coming back in the red and yellow. That was another mistake, too. Bringing Hogan back in the red and yellow, I thought, Hogan should have just graciously walked away. That was a big problem.
But that was Bischoff, not Russo. When Hogan first turned back to the good side, if you will, that was in August of '99 when Bischoff was still in charge, so...
Yeah, Hogan should have been what Brock Lesnar ended up being, like maybe a part-timer, maybe every quarter he comes in for a big match and something like that. That's what WCW needed.
I would have liked to see. Go ahead, Aaron.
They could have kept those guys around, but get rid of the guaranteed contract and just pay them, for their quarterly appearance, and that's it.
I'm gonna lay it on the table here, and you guys tell me if I'm right or wrong here, and we'll kind of see where this goes.
Okay.
WCW's biggest issue once the momentum started declining was that Turner and Time Warner AOL was not willing to sell the company. If they'd have got off of Turner and away from the merger that was taking place in 2001, and they'd got on FX like Bischoff was trying to, Bischoff was going to buy the company, and FX was going to be a part of that package or whatever. If they'd have been on any other network, under any other corporate umbrella besides the Turner umbrella, they might still be in existence today.
It's hard to say because they were bleeding so much money, so you don't know.
Well, right. But remember, Bischoff's whole plan was buy the company, shut it down, take like 6 months off, make people go, what's going to happen when they come back? And then the Big Bang pay-per-view they had planned in May of 2001, come back, here it is, boom, new WCW, make your own opinion. It would have been at least maybe not a complete stop the bleeding, but a stopgap to see where it went.
Yep. And there were some experiments that I liked along the way. Like I forgot that they put Sid Vicious with Randy Savage. And to me, that was a great little experiment, but I think Randy was gone not too long after that.
Yeah.
What happened with Randy Savage in WCW? Why couldn't he have gotten a proper... Was he just old and beat up? And I mean, he still had the look. He still had the promo. What happened? Why didn't they capitalize on Randy Savage?
Randy Savage's biggest problem was Hulk Hogan.
But what about the times where Hogan was kind of gone from WCW? Why couldn't they have got Savage back without that politics?
Savage couldn't really go anymore, unfortunately. As much as I love Randy Savage, by that point, his body was broken down. He could barely do anything in the ring.
And you got to remember, every time Savage got momentum, either Flair or Hogan beat him for the title.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but Savage had one of his midlife crisis things where he came back and, had Gorgeous George and, tried to hide his bald spot and that sort of thing, and it just didn't work,
Right.
Maybe if he, I give him credit, though, for trying to reinvent himself, but it just didn't work.
I like that Savage.
He landed a role in Spider-Man. I mean, come on. He still had it, Aaron. He had it, man. I'm sorry. He did.
To be fair to Randy, and I'm going to disagree with Aaron, Randy still had the ability in 99. His body was just, like you said, it was broken down. Yeah. When he came to TNA, that was too much.
Oh, yeah,
agreed.
Definitely.
We saw him live at TNA for the big main event.
But again, I think it would have been best off Savage in the same role in 99 as Hogan. Be a part-timer. Come in every 3 months or so for a big match, and that's it.
Hogan, Savage, Flair, all those guys come in for part-time situations, not full-time, guaranteed money where you're bleeding money hand over fist.
Yeah.
Yeah. What WWE's doing with Brock is great. They could have done stuff like that with those guys, in my opinion. That's just one of the problems. And then you can make the focal point on the newer guys. But then again, it might have been the same problem with like where you bring them in and they take the spotlight from the other guys on the big shows. I felt like Starrcade, like WCW dropped the ball with that pay-per-view too. Like that should have been like the WrestleMania, and it felt like after a couple of years it was just another show. And
it felt like that going into Starrcade 97. After Starrcade 97, it didn't feel like that anymore. Am I the only one that thinks that?
Yeah.
Well, no, I will agree with that. And the fact that when Bischoff took over, Bischoff made Starrcade relevant again in 93 when they had Flair versus Vader. The early Turner years of Starrcade, 88 through like 92, Starrcade was an afterthought.
Yeah. Now, one change I would have made with the pay-per-views, I think that's another area where WCW really killed their business, and that's with the pay-per-views. Making the pay-per-views, throwing out random matches on pay-per-view, not building them up properly, and it got to the point where those pay-per-view buy rates just completely collapsed. Now, if it was me, I would have kept focusing on making the pay-per-view something special and making them as big of a deal as possible and not kill your pay-per-view business. That was one of their major issues. And that's where I would have saved Hogan for like the special attraction matches every now and then. Maybe cycle them in and out. Maybe have Hogan on a pay-per-view and then 2 months later have Savage on a pay-per-view and then Flair, and just cycle them in and out so they don't get too stale too quickly.
I loved Hogan and Sturgis, though. The Road Wild would have been perfect for the Hogan pay-per-view.
The problem is WCW did not make money from those Sturgis pay-per-views. There was no live gate for that.
Zero gate.
Yeah, so I do like the idea, though. I liked what they did with Sturgis. See, WCW did do some cool things that I don't think
the Mall of America.
I like when WCW went to different venues, like Club La Vila for the spring break, or going to the beach for Bash at the Beach, and even Sturgis. I liked that concept of doing it in different places instead of your traditional arena. I thought that was a good thing, and I would have done more of that, but find a way to make money doing it. Charge for a gate or whatever, so you can make some money from it. And the other thing, and not do it all the time, just do it once in a while for the special events. That's one thing I would have done. And I like the sets. That's another thing I really liked about WCW, the customized sets. Yes, they were expensive and they cost a lot of money, but that was one thing that made those pay-per-views special, in my opinion, the customized sets. And they did get rid of those by like 2000 when they were losing a lot of money. They really had to. That's unfortunate. So
at that point, they used the same set for Nitro.
Everything.
Yeah, and it got to the point where they were taping Nitro and Thunder the same night. So by 2000, they just had to cut costs as much as possible. So I don't know. By 2000 if they could have turned the thing around. They just had lost so much money. The brand was so damaged. But we'll go ahead and we'll wrap this up with some final thoughts. Stefan, let's start with you. Anything else you want to add? Anything that you would have done to change WCW for the better? Do you think there was anything that could have saved it?
Well, I think we can all agree that the backstage is where it failed.
Yeah.
Too many cooks in the kitchen, too many changes of who's in charge. They never gave anything a chance. By the time something would finally catch on with the fans, there'd be somebody else in charge. It would be over. They would be moving in another direction, usually for at least a couple weeks, if not a couple months. It would be pandemonium. You wouldn't know what was going on. Yeah. And then now you're into new storylines, but those aren't going to last. Somebody else is going to get in charge. And there was no saving it backstage.
Exactly.
But I wanted to end with, since I get to go first, I guess, I wanted to ask each of you, who do you think would be in WCW now? Who do you think, not lower card or mid card, but who do you think the big guys that are headlining WWE right now, who would have been WCW guys in 2017 into 2018?
Can I go?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. By all means.
Their main eventer right now would be Daniel Bryan, and he would be wrestling.
Good point. That's a very solid point.
And I'd like to say CM Punk, but I don't think he wants to be in wrestling.
Here's the thing right. To use Jeff's line, if WCW had stayed in business, I don't think there would have been a TNA. TNA was basically, trying to make up for WCW being gone. So I think a lot of the disgruntled WWE guys would have ended up in WCW if WCW had stayed around. So I think if WCW had lived, I think some of the ECW guys, like I would have picked up RVD. If Bischoff had gotten it to work and he rebooted WCW 2001, I would have made RVD one of the top stars, build the company around him.
Yep.
I think Jeff would agree with me 100%.
Took you right out of my mouth when I was going to give my answer.
So
yep.
Jeff, anything else you want to add to this before we wrap up?
Let me point out something. I think an early mistake WCW made in the Bischoff era was increasing the amount of pay-per-views. And people say, well, they make you money, and that's fine. But having a monthly pay-per-view meant the storylines had to keep progressing, and there was no long-term booking.
I actually think that's a good thing, though. I think when you go 2 months without a pay-per-view, I feel like WWE does it a lot where they just stall for time and the shows move a lot slower. I actually don't like that.
I do. I liked building toward the Royal Rumble, building toward WrestleMania, building toward Starrcade, building toward Halloween Havoc, and just people just did it. They want the pay-per-view to happen so bad that when it happens, they're just throwing money at the company.
Yeah, but you got to admit, this 7 or 8 weeks between Raw's last pay-per-view appearance and the Royal Rumble has been dragging on.
I agree with Stephen.
Well, that's because of the way WWE is being booked and written right now. If WCW, the way it was being written in 96, 97, and even 98, had their big pay-per-views instead of 12 or 13 or whatever it was, it would have been better, I think.
Well, there you go.
Just my opinion. It's my opinion. So.
I don't have any final thoughts. We talked about Russo enough. I'm content. Stefan, I do have one other guy that would be the fate. I said Daniel Bryan, but say the concussion, they wouldn't even clear him. The one guy that should be the face of WCW if it existed today, Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes.
Well, because of Dusty.
Cody Rhodes.
Because of Dusty.
Cody
Dusty's
Rhodes.
Yep.
I can't believe I didn't say that before Daniel Bryan. My apologies.
Charlotte would be there too.
Yeah, probably.
Charlotte there too. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it could. We can only imagine what we would have, and we'd have great TV because if they had Monday Nitro versus Raw.
Yeah. And you have to wonder if WCW had stayed in business, what would have happened with AJ Styles because he was there. People seem to forget AJ Styles was there in WCW for about a month.
Atlanta.
He's there for about a month. You remember, Jeff?
I remember.
You remember?
Gosh,
I
so
know.
many possibilities. Yeah.
Yeah, AJ Styles and they brought in Daniels, which was I think was too little, too late. Daniels, I believe he was doing some stuff in WCW in '98. Or 99, maybe he was doing WWE stuff in 98, but the fact that Daniels
he and Aguilera played the Conquistadors in 2000 for WWF.
And I think WCW was going to do a storyline with him and Vampiro in 2000 and never ended up coming to be. So I would have liked to have seen Daniels. I mean, there were guys that could have been used, but unfortunately WCW was so far gone, and who knows if a rebranding would have worked or not. But we've talked about some of our ideas. What do you guys think? Leave a comment. Let us know on NoDQ.com and YouTube. What could have been done, if anything, to save WCW? I would like to thank our guest, Stefan, for being on today. Great guest today. It was an honor to have you on. And again, I appreciate your viewership and support over the years. Anything you would like to plug?
Well, I wanted to answer my own question, and
go for it.
I think it's a bold, and obviously it's not a prediction because it would never happen. I think John Cena would have ended up in WCW.
Interesting.
I think John Cena would have ended up in WCW, if not a lot of the guys that came up like that, like Batista. Obviously not Randy Orton.
Well, interesting story. WCW, they turned down Batista from what I recall in his book. That what's his name, Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker, right?
Buddy Lee Parker, didn't want Batista on the roster.
Yeah,
well,
at that point,
WCW
caused
was
WCW to fail.
That was
so
another
if WCW had succeeded, maybe there would have been people in charge that would have taken Batista.
Yep. Absolutely, they missed the boat on Batista for sure because Batista was almost going to go to WCW.
And what's funny is talking with Joni over the years when we were still friends, her and I, before she passed away. She wanted to work for the WWF, and she pitched, and Hunter and Sean pitched, and then when WCW offered her a contract, Vince went, "Okay, maybe I better take her." Yeah, WCW wanted China, so
yeah. So Stefan, your plugs.
Well, you can friend me on Facebook, Stefan Osborne, STEFAN OSBORNE. I'm on Twitter at Stefan R Osborne. And I've got my own YouTube channel where occasionally I do videos about wrestling when something pisses me off, usually. So if you want to follow me on...
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, that's typically YouTube, how it is.
It's After Match Wrestling,
Okay.
or I think my email for that is the Eidolon of Wrestling, EIDOLON of Wrestling. Other than that, I don't think I have any other social media. So
Okay.
I just want to thank you guys for having me on. This has been a
Of
blast.
course.
Absolutely, definitely one of our best panels for sure. I hope everybody enjoyed watching it and enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed recording it. I'm sure Dylan enjoyed it too. Dylan was actually pretty well behaved, so I'm happy for that. So everything's A-OK here on NoDQ.com. Thank you all for tuning into the NoDQ panel and watching today. Buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com. Search NoDQ. Check out the link in the description box. Use the code SAVE5 to get a discount. Follow Jeff at _ Jeff Meacham, and follow Virtue at NoDQ _ Virtue. Check them out. I'm at Aaron Rift on all social media, and that'll do it for this video. We will see you guys next time.